Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have come this afternoon to alert Barbadians that we are in a crisis and that we cannot keep burying our heads in the sand. Barbadians this week have been allowed to engage in a debate that is effectively futile and that would suggest that the laying off of 3,000 workers in the manner announced, or a pay cut that is now being suggested by all public servants, will bring this country and this economy to safety and stability. It is a false and futile debate and will not carry us to safety. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance must come clean with the country and stop spinning tot in mud. Persons are being asked to make sacrifices and will do so if it will lead to stability or improve circumstances. The question, therefore, must be asked of all: where will these sacrifices take this country and the economy? The time has come for persons in influential positions in Barbados to start to put Barbados first, and that in spite of Christmas, this must be understood that time is of immediate essence. The magnitude and the scale of the problems that we face must be shared with the public and also the institutions. Further, those who are aware must stop burying their heads in the sand. I would tell persons like Sir Charles Williams as well that I understand that he may mean well, but the Minister of Finance needs to give him the true picture. It is much worse than he thinks, and if he had the true picture, he might speak differently. The leadership of the National Union of Public Workers is clearly not focused. They need independent economic advice to help them to get focused. In fact, the National Union of Public Workers has said that their agenda is not Roebuck Street, but I must say that it is also not the workers' agenda. And I would only say that Roebuck Street clearly has always had a workers' agenda from inception to the last term, where we made a number of improvements in the workers of this country, from flexi allowances, abolition of casual workers, etc. But let me say, we are truly in a deep crisis, and the government has lost control. The clearest signs of this are that the Minister of Finance made a ministerial statement to meet a deadline of the departure of an IMF Article 4 team from Barbados. And it was done at a time where it was to minimize the harshness of the IMF's judgment on the performance of the Barbados economy. It was not even to unlock funds from the International Monetary Fund or the other multilateral institutions or the capital markets, as Prime Minister Sandiford was able to do when he sent home 4,000 workers and when he cut salaries by 8%. We get nothing for what this government is proposing. Further, this announcement was made without consultation with anyone. We had not completed consultation with the social partners, nor indeed was there a clear, identified implementation plan to meet the unusually close deadline of January 15th that Minister Sinclair has set. We have also now heard from the General Secretary of the Barbados Workers' Union that these announcements in the ministerial statement were just proposals for discussion. Now, Minister Sinclair, he says, has agreed that they are just proposals. And we have equally heard from the Prime Minister earlier this week that he is prepared to welcome alternatives to the announcements that are to be implemented in less than a month. This is a country with a sovereign government. There must be a clear ministerial statement reflecting action on the government, and not now debate as if we are still in some school system. A ministerial statement is a more serious action. It sets out government's policy as to what government will do. It is not debated in Parliament, and it is not speculative. It must reflect the actions which must be taken and will be taken by a government upon which a population can properly plan. That is why it is relied upon as evidence in lawsuits against governments because it reflects government's policies and programs. We are now in a stage where we do not know what is the status of the ministerial statement and the actions proposed by government. For this ministerial statement now to be reduced to nothing but proposals is to make a nonsense of it all and to add to the confusion to the lives of thousands of Barbadians who don't know whether they're going forward, going backward, sideways, or otherwise. And it further undermines the confidence in the Minister of Finance, if that is at all possible. The Barbados Labour Party expressed its own lack of confidence in the Minister of Finance 10 weeks ago. We understand why some in the country may not have had the same urgency as we did because they did not have the same level of information that we have. The government continued to mislead them, even on the reasons for the failed bond or indeed the likely success of the August budget, which has now been repudiated. Well, the results from the lab are in. And Minister Sinclair has failed at every turn. 3 failed plans, and now a 4th one in a ministerial statement dead on arrival. How many more plans must fail? How much longer can we continue as a people to give him the benefit of the doubt or even to believe him? How many people must now suffer for his incompetence and his failure to share the full facts with the Barbadian population? One sense is that the cabinet does not even know the full state of affairs. As I said, we saw it coming, and we saw where the consequences of failing to act decisively would lead the country, and what would happen to tens of thousands of innocent Barbadians. We acted and we brought a motion of no confidence. Almost 20,000 people who signed our petition also saw it. Indeed, there are still people this week requesting us to reopen the petition that reflects no confidence in Minister Sinclair. I am saying now that this is a good start, but we now need urgent action from where it matters most. There are only 2 possible sources that hold the balance of power now in this country. 1, any one of the 15 elected members of the government benches in the House of Assembly, or 2, the leadership of the trade union movement or the private sector. Special interest groups must now act in the interest of Barbados. We are not talking about hundreds of groups, we're talking about a handful of groups. And these groups are given a legitimacy by this population by reason of the titles and positions that they hold. And they have a duty to this same population even beyond that to their sectoral group or their interest groups. We are calling on all concerned and well-meaning Barbadians that they must now lobby these groups over this season and into the new year to do right by this country which we love and which is our only hope. There are other entities, and these entities that I referred to have the power in their hands to turn this crisis around. But it cannot be turned around with a band-aid approach. We need action from people to give Barbados a chance to rebound from this catastrophe. And Barbadians from all walks of life must now make it clear to the people in these groups that they can no longer sit on a fence anymore and wait for outcomes that they know will not happen. They cannot bury their heads in the sand anymore. For Barbados to grow, Chris Sinclair, Minister of Finance, must go. For Barbados to go, he must go. He has done more damage to the short and medium-term prospects of this country and to the lives and livelihood of thousands of Barbadians than any Hurricane Sandy ever did. It is almost unpatriotic to now support Chris Sinclair as Minister of Finance of Barbados. Yes, we are returning to the issue again of confidence in him and in the incompetence that he shows. Last weekend, Bloomberg, and now this week, Forbes magazine have both referred to Barbados in the most unflattering of terms and are even referring and calling Barbados Cyprus West to communicate the scale of the problem to international investors and the capital markets. What more must we hear? Last night, we received the third downgrade this month. Standard & Poor's first, then Carrie Chris, and now Moody's last night. Last night, Moody's gave us a double downgrade. Not one notch, but two notches. Not a positive outlook, but a negative outlook. And what is even of more concern, that it has come after the announcement by the Minister of Finance in a ministerial statement that the government's corrective action is the immediate freezing of 5,500 jobs, leading to 3,000 persons going home by March in the first instance. They recognize that it will, waiting for that. They recognize that the ministerial statement of government's actions will not get the country to stability or growth. And they have said clearly, and I would like you to read the Moody's report, don't follow me. They have said clearly that if the reserves continue to fall and if the central bank continues to print money, they will downgrade us again. It's right here. Right here. Now, as Bajans say, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. The board of the central bank and the governor of the central bank must recognize their duty and what their actions will lead to if money is printed again in this country to meet the government's uncontrollable deficit. Even when the government proposes to send home 3,000 or to have a pay cut, it has a huge gap that is 7 times what is planning to save by the actions that have been occupying Barbados with the layoffs this week. And if you don't believe me, read the IMF press release that made it absolutely clear after the announcement by Chris Sinclair that the government's deficit will still be 9.5% at the end of March, a deficit that is worse than the one announced by the Minister of Finance in August as his worst case scenario and the one that we needed to cure and to run from with urgency. So a worse situation in March than the one he started with in August. I say that the tinkering and confusion must stop. And the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance must stop handling these downgrades as well in a childish and irresponsible manner as was done in the House of Assembly. They have been trivializing them. And our ignoring the downgrades will not solve the problems in the same way, Maria, that a person who goes to the doctor and is told by the doctor that their blood count is down and falling still, ignores them only to their detriment. We know what will happen to that person at the end of the day. I've already indicated that I will do a State of the Nation address to Barbadians in early January. And I will lay out in detail then all of the facts as we have them and all of the facts we believe that the people must have in order to assess where we truly are and where we must go as a nation. I'm speaking today because I believe first and foremost that we must put ourselves in a condition to start with a bang from the beginning of 2014. We do not have the luxury of time. And there are a number of things that I want to put on the table to start off 2014 with as a matter of urgency. First, there must be a restoration of confidence in the competence of the Minister of Finance of Barbados. The Minister of Finance must be somebody who we trust and who we can believe. This one must go. 2, Barbadians must decide where we want to go, where they want to go. The Labour Party knows where we must go, but the country must decide where it wants to go and what must of necessity happen for us to get there. Sacrifices must not be asked of the people in vain. Sacrifice must mean something. Thirdly, the central bank must be in neutral and objective voice in the management of this country's affairs. The governor of the central bank must not behave as if he is the 21st member of the cabinet of Barbados. We need a governor who will come to us on a monthly basis and not quarterly. No. If you go to a doctor and he does not tell you anything, you're in a serious crisis of illness, and he coming to you once every 3-4 weeks, you will want to know what kind of mad doctor this is that is trying to take care of you. Time is now essential in all that we do. Fourthly, the government must stop, and I'm appealing now deeply, the government must truly stop the partisan approach to devising solutions for going forward. You cannot just want to hear from the Democratic Labour Party. The Barbados Labour Party represents 50% or even arguably more now in the country at this stage. And I am saying that we need a national advisory group to the government that is competent, that is credible, and that will act in the national interest. And in this vein, I make perhaps what is the most important suggestion this morning, that the time has come for the Prime Minister of Barbados, who remains silent and mum other than on his way to a meeting or another function, to address the country first and foremost, to recognize that there is no way President Obama or David Cameron could remain silent if 12% of the public service was being proposed to be sent home in those countries. And that further, in addition to addressing the country, that he must establish now an eminent persons group of Barbadians to address these national economic concerns as a matter of the utmost urgency. This group should be set up no later than the 6th of January next year, which is the Monday, the first working Monday in the new year, because 2014 will be the year of make or break for Barbados. This group should be given no more than 4 weeks to report back to the country. When the OECS faced problems, they set up a similar eminent persons group to look at the expenditure and the restructuring of their governments, because structure must follow function. This group, if it is to be taken seriously, must reflect and address the concerns to us. And we have 3 critical problems as a country now that need urgent action, and every Barbadian must come to understand them. 1, an uncontrollable fiscal deficit by the government that even with the announcements of last week, we cannot finance without the printing of money, because nobody is lending us sufficient money to pay the government bills. And the government, even when it speaks, is not addressing the arrears, which is over $800 million on top of $1 billion deficit. 2, a continuing and steep decline of our reserves, foreign reserves, that is placing our fixed exchange rate at risk. Our reserves have dropped by over 42% since the beginning of April. And no Credit Suisse loan can help us out of this problem. It is a limited and temporary boost for 2 months. If tourism is not earning, if international business is not earning, if investors don't have confidence to bring their capital back in, our reserves will continue to fall, and we will put our exchange rate at risk, and people's pensions and salaries will diminish like how water evaporates in the atmosphere. Thirdly, an economy that is ceasing to be viable. And that is the most worrisome thing. No sector is producing in this country and is capable of leading us out of growth, and the government is doing nothing about it. Tourism has had 23 straight months of decline. International business is down. Agriculture is down. Manufacturing is down. The retail and distributive sectors are facing problems. Local businesses are closing. And while we may say that there's still so much activity around, the problem is the rate of closure. And our biggest fear is that 1, when businesses start to close, become insolvent or bankrupt. 2, households start to fracture, because there is nothing like money problems other than infidelity to break up households. And 3, people start talking about going away to find a better living. They're not going to come back because of government change or anything so. They're not going to come back so at all. So that when we say to you that we have three critical problems that Barbadians must come to appreciate, these are the three problems that the Eminent Persons Group must address as a matter of urgency. We cannot wait because the layoffs are intended to start from the 15th of January, although we do not see how, because there are substantive issues of how you're going to resolve early retirement and the fact that a person may get less NIS, how you're going to resolve the fact that the government, having breached the protocol, will now be breaching the Employment Rights Act in some instances with statutory boards where 6 weeks notice is required. How are you going to deal with the legal issues surrounding increments? There is a minefield of issues that the unions and the government have to resolve before the 15th of January. But while this is being done, let us stop focusing on it and let us start focusing now on the real problem the country is facing. This Eminent Persons Group should have no more than 6 or 7 persons. A nomination should come from the government itself, from Labour, from the private sector, and from the opposition. We in the Barbados Labour Party are prepared to play our part and to nominate persons of the highest caliber to serve. You know, we have a former Prime Minister who is the finest Minister of Finance that the Caribbean has seen in the last 20 years. You know, we have Erskine Griffith, who has served this country with distinction as a Director of Finance and Economic Affairs, and who was there on the site in 1991 when we had to go to the IMF, in 1983 when we had problems. And I'm saying to you formally today that the Barbados Labour Party will nominate someone to serve on this Eminent Persons Group. If we are serious about putting Barbados first and to give us our last chance to get out of this crisis without facing worse and without asking for meaningless sacrifices from our people, then we need to establish this group. There will be adjustments in Barbados. There will be sacrifices in Barbados in 2014. But sacrifice and adjustment must stand for something and must lead us to safety. They must not be in vain. And this debate this week tells me that the unions and the other commentators have not a clue about the scale of the problem, and that if we simply arbitrarily cut with a butcher's knife, we will get carnage and not a restructured government to carry us to safety and to bring back growth. The Prime Minister must address the people of this country. If he is not prepared to do so, then he will fail us as a people. No prescription founded on a wages cut or arbitrary dismissal of 3,000 people as an arithmetical necessity will suffice. That is only to satisfy the judgment of the IMF and to stop us from being one notch above failure in the Article 4 report that is to come. It does not even unlock funds. I ask Barbadians now, please, please stand up decisively and now for your country, which all of us love. If we don't do this, we will pay the price. Let us not regret our failure to do so 6 months from now. And I address you 3 days before Christmas, knowing full well that if we wait until the end of the year to make these points, then we will lose the first 2 to 3 weeks of January, and we simply do not have that luxury as a country and as a people. I say this to them and to the people of this country with all sincerity. Thank you.